Good evening and welcome to Grand Valley State University's Alumni Virtual Town Hall. My name is Jesse Bernal and I'm the Vice President for Inclusion, Equity, and Presidential Initiatives at GVSU, and I'll be helping to facilitate our time together. Today's town hall is one of 22 planned virtual town halls President Mantella is hosting for all our university and community partners since we moved to remote work and learning in March. We're engaging over 3,600 faculty, staff, current students, future Lakers, their families, business and nonprofit leaders, community partners, and now you, our distinguished alumni. Our time today is part of our commitment to providing ongoing and regular communication to the entire community. So thank you all for joining us and for your continued support and engagement. As you can imagine, we received hundreds of questions during the registration process, and we'll be answering as many as we can. We will begin with opening comments from President Mantella and other administrative leaders at Grand Valley. For those we do not get to or that were specific to individual circumstances, we will provide individual responses and a group follow-up email to all those who have registered for this town hall. This session is also being recorded, and a recording will be provided in that follow-up message. To orient you a bit to Zoom, at the bottom of your window, you will see two options. There's a Q&A box where you are encouraged to ask additional questions throughout our time together. There's also an open chat box where you can submit comments, ask for clarification, or provide additional information to the panelists. We'll be responding to some questions live and others through typed responses that everyone will have access to in both of these places, that Q&A box and the chat box. We'll get to as many as we possibly can during our brief time together. I'd like to now introduce our university leadership who have joined us this evening. Lynn Blue, who goes by Chick by many of us, our Vice President for Enrollment Development. Tom Butcher, our Vice President and General Counsel. Karen Loth, our Vice President for University Development. Matt McLogan, our Vice President for University Relations and Secretary to the Board of Trustees. Dr. Greg Saniel, our Vice President for Finance and Administration and Treasurer to the Board of Trustees. Dr. Lauren Rollman, our Vice Provost for Student Affairs and Dean of Students. Dr. Etta Bufidel, our Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs. Michelle Rhodes, our Associate Vice President for Financial Aid. And Chris Barbie, the Director of Alumni Relations. I'm now proud to introduce Grand Valley State University's President, Dr. Philomena Mantella.
Thank you, Jesse, and thank you to all of you who have joined us. We're thrilled that you're spending an hour with us to engage about your university. And I want to begin by thanking you for all you're doing in this shared responsibility to keep our community well and our state well, and to watch out for the health and safety of one another. It is wonderful to see Lakers pulling together, and I think the video reminds us on our culture as a university, and we miss our community and personal interactions dearly, but we're proud that you're all a part of bending the curve here in Michigan, so thank you for that. I also want to thank the frontline workers, the healthcare workers, and the essential workers at Grand Valley who have kept the university moving forward and keeping our systems running, both mechanically at the university, keeping our facilities clean, keeping our systems digitally running so that learning continues. Very, very much appreciated to those at the university who have carried that load, and those who have helped us to move remote as we faced a remote learning model being adopted over really a 4-day period, and the whole movement of our university stepping down from face-to-face instruction to fully remote, fully supported and open services in engaging in new ways. I'd also like to acknowledge the work that has been done both throughout the communities in West Michigan and throughout the state, but where Lakers have stepped in to support others who are more vulnerable and who need support. And we had a call for a network of volunteers where a number of alumni joined volunteer efforts that engaged our broader community in being sure people were not isolated, being sure PPE was created, being sure our students were reached out to. In fact, we were able to reach out to over all of our 25,000 students during this period of time individually to be sure we understood the circumstances they were facing. Because as we all know, COVID-19 has affected us all differently, and it affected us in so many ways. Ways that are how we interact with our family, how we interact with our university, but certainly how we also stay safe, and the economic conditions, so many impacts that we've had to adjust to and address. And the networks of support have been, I think, a great benefit and contribution to those broader efforts. So thank you again to all who have helped us lead during this period of time. And I thought the best way to open up the conversation is to really give you some sense of the way in which we think about leadership during this unprecedented period, during a period where we can't be certain about everything we'd like to do. And the first element of our leadership model has been to lead with our values, is to be sure that our community comes first and our students are at the center. And as we face decisions very early on in terms of how would we support our students who had no place to be, or how would we support our students going home, what was always at the heart of our action was being sure we were doing the right things by them. And that has guided us well. The second element of our value system has been to preserve the continuity of learning. It is critically important, not only to the individual, to be able to continue to make progress on their learning, whether they're in completing up their high school, or whether they're here with us at Grand Valley, or they're looking forward to pursuing their education at Grand Valley. But also, it's important to our broader community and to the state of Michigan as we face this economic disruption that will require us to rebuild in so many areas. We will need our talent. We will need our Lakers, like all of you, to be a part of that process. So we've done anything we can to keep learning happening, both as we moved remote, but now as we look forward into what remains a level of uncertainty. We're controlling what we can control, and we're accepting that we may be right, or we could have to adjust based on our plans. And I'm going to share with you, along with my colleagues, our plans to date around continuity of learning. The other element of our thinking, of our approach to managing this crisis, is to manage it with facing the disruption with an unwavering commitment to making Grand Valley stronger. Grand Valley is 60 years old. It has been through many changes in its past. This may be unprecedented, but we have exercised our muscles before around change and done well. And we're going to continue to keep that attitude and focus on a stronger Grand Valley and the promise of what's ahead for all of us as we manage the present. I would like to share with you a few decisions we've made to kick off this conversation. We went remote with our learning, online, through Zoom, through asynchronous learning and synchronous learning in the middle of our winter term. So we had made the decision to stay in an online format for the spring and summer terms. A couple of reasons why, besides obviously the condition that we're still in a stay at home, shelter in place order. But we also think it's important to create a level of clarity around what the model is going to be, and support our students well, and deepen our approach to online learning, getting increasingly more sophisticated around high quality, high touch, high impact online learning. So having those 3 consecutive terms will enable us to both create some surety and to get stronger in the online medium. We are also taking some immediate cost containment measures, some of which include foregoing salary increases for the upcoming year, going to essential hires only, really having what we like to call a hiring chill rather than a hiring freeze, because we are going to move forward where we think it's absolutely critical, but most of the hiring will slow down and stop. And travel restrictions and creation of our own sort of COVID relief fund to support our students. We are also making the decision to be face-to-face in the fall. And we are planning to do so, you know, unless there is a stay-at-home order, we will be in a position to be face-to-face in a public health informed way. And that's the way we like to think about it, being able to adopt all of the measures that will be considered best practice around public health. And we're in a particularly strong position to do that. And I'm going to tell you a few of the reasons why. One, we teach in small sections and average class sizes of 26. We only have about 1% of our 4,400 sections that are 100 students or more. And we have a fairly large physical plant and some capacity to expand within that. We have about 85% of our housing that is new, newer than most. We have among the newest inventory among the Michigan publics, and about 85% of it is in suite style and apartment style housing. So we have a 15 to 20% problem in terms of density that we need to work our way through, and we're doing that. We're going through the process of considering social distancing, considering learning in smaller groups, larger venues, how we meet in a combination of digital and face-to-face, what we can allow to continue, what we need to curtail for some time. We're also looking at the matters of testing and contact tracing, all of the sort of full supports that will allow our mission to continue and allow us to step up or step down as we need to, and not have to think of these hard cutovers to fully online or fully face-to-face. We're working across the system. I'm working with a number of our leaders across the West Michigan community in the public health space, working with other university presidents, and all of the people on this call are working across their counterparts and across our counties to be sure we can do this in a safe way. And we're excited to move forward in that with that planning frame. Also, we're working on building the Laker culture, which we know is there. We know that you have taken the lead and shown the way in so many ways about Lakers giving to Lakers and our network. But we need a culture of responsibility, because it's going to be incumbent on all of us as individuals to do the right thing, check our temperature, be sure we're well when we go out, wear masks, etc. So we'll be thinking about how we build our culture around the kind of personal responsibility that is a signature of the Laker community. I want to take a few minutes to ask our Vice President, Greg Sanyal, to talk about the financial health of the university. And then I'll come back to say a little more about that as it relates to our future moving forward. So Greg?
Thank you, President Mantella. The financial impact of COVID-19 on Grand Valley State can be thought of really in 2 distinct phases. The first phase is the immediate hit that we took financially when we immediately went to refunds for housing, dining, and parking. The total impact to the university between the refunds and then some added expenses as we moved to the online delivery was about $13 million. And the university was in great financial shape. We had a strong contingency pot we build into the budget every year. We have great reserves. We were able to absorb that $13 million impact relatively easily. We did not have to resort to layoffs or furloughs or anything like that. Everybody continued to work their normal hours. As we look towards the future, there's a lot of uncertainty. We have delayed our budgeting process because the potential impact with COVID-19 on what our fall enrollment is going to look like. We're very encouraged. Our spring summer enrollment is better than expected. And with the fall enrollment, we are delaying our decision to make the budget moving forward. We also have great uncertainty with the state appropriation. But Grand Valley State, you all know, is a great university with strong traditions and has always bucked the trend with regards to demographics and enrollment. And we're very confident that we will buck the trend here this year with the impact with COVID-19. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, President Mantella.
Thank you, Greg. I just want to double down on a couple of things that Greg said that I think are really important. Grand Valley in the last decade increased 64% in its enrollment at a time where many schools declined and many schools stayed flat. So as Greg pointed out, we have been able to move forward as a strong institution in periods of constraint. Now, I'm not kidding myself, and neither is anybody else on this team, that this is an unprecedented period, and what the constriction we'll see in the way people work and learn and think will be profound. But the way we think about it is that the attributes that families and students will be looking for are many of the attributes we have. People are not going to stop going to college. They're going to make adjustments. They're going to rethink plans. And when we think about Grand Valley State University, your university, we think about a university that the faculty knows your name. We think about a university that there is strong relationship and it's a culture of care. We think about a university that's in a safe community in West Michigan. And we think about one that has responded well over the last crisis. I think there's been a lot of conversation about what universities did and didn't do in the face of students moving remote. As Greg indicated, we were the first and one of the few who prorated full housing, board, parking quickly to our students. We were one of the first to open up our arms to students with hardships, and we have responded to over 5,800 hardship cases because this has impacted many economically and in their plans going forward. So we think we're the kind of place that would give you a sense of comfort and confidence to move forward in uncertain times. We're not going to be able to guarantee the model, but we can guarantee the care. And so we are going to presume that and work for the best and plan for the worst. So I won't kid you that we are working hard on contingencies as we work hard on achieving the outcomes that has been Grand Valley's track record. And those contingencies will look at things like workforce reductions and things that we have to do, but we're going to take those steps when we must take those steps. And as Greg said, and I want to underscore this point too, because you've all been a part of this, this university was strong, well managed, and had good reserves to be able to allow some decision space. And so a lot of that is to your credit and to the credit of my predecessors who helped to put us in a position where we could say, yeah, we can take a short-term blow, we can give ourselves decision space, and we can move forward thoughtfully. So that's sort of where we are. I do want to talk about some of the opportunities going forward, but I think in the interest of time, I'm going to cut over to Jesse, and we'll pick up on some of that in the Q&A, I'm sure. So thank you.
Thank you, President Mantella. So some follow-up questions from some of our alumni, particularly as we're planning for a regular experience or somewhat regular on-campus experience in the fall. Some specific questions, you know, it was, housing and living on campus was so pivotal in the lives of many of our alumni. Curious about how the university may be approaching on-campus housing and the residential experience with some of the health protocols that we'll need to take into consideration.
Lauren?
Sure. Well, I love the question, of course. And as the president said, we have about 85% of our units are private. So first of all, we're really well configured relative to our peers for small numbers of students relative, for example, to bathrooms. The sanitation and custodial standards at the university are very high already, although the facility staff has already increased and will this fall with viricides and different kinds of cleaning methods to assure that the buildings are kept clean. We're working on a series of communication and strategies to make sure students know the kinds of things expected of them and what they can expect of us. For those buildings that are community style, we're looking at some social distancing methods. We're still planning. We don't know exactly what we're going to do yet, but we're very confident given our relationship with the county and public health authorities and with the faculty and staff that are so good in the health sciences area here at the university that we're advantaged, particularly relative to peers, to make sure that we have pretty healthy and safe environments for our resident students this fall.
Great, thank you. So some questions also, and maybe this is for Dean Rollman as well, about student life experiences in the fall. You know, some of our alumni are former athletes and are interested in some of the impacts we may have in sports and other student organizations. How do we see some of those opportunities either shifting or changing as we look at the fall in the future?
Well, maybe answer that in two ways. One is relative to sports, as you mentioned. I've gotten questions, of course, about intramural sports and club sports. And of course, the athletics department has its own considerations and is guided in many cases by athletic conferences. We're probably going to end up taking this a team by team basis. There might be some sports that are high contact that we might have to implement certain measures for. There would be other things like tennis, for example, which is obviously social distance by nature. So we are doing that planning now. I imagine we'll have some team by team kinds of considerations. And as I mentioned a moment ago, we're advantaged with our relationships with the healthcare system, public health, and the faculty and staff. So we're using that guidance to make some of those decisions. With the other parts of student life, student organizations, and the way students interact in campus, I'm certain that we'll have some differences this fall. We hope to be and are planning to be open. We'll therefore have to have some measures in place that might alter the way we have large group gatherings, the way we have student organization events, but we intend to make sure that there is a vibrant student life, even if it's quasi-virtual. We want to make sure that students and the way that students have engaged at Grand Valley for a long time, that there's some way to do that. And so we're doing that planning right now.
Excellent.
And President Mantella, so a similar question around some shifts that we may have to see in the fall as we return to in-person learning, particularly around some of our high-touch classes like art and music, as well as experiential learning opportunities like internships and co-ops and laboratory experiences for our students. What plans does the university have in place as we think about some of the health requirements that we'll have to implement as well?
Yeah, I'll just say that I was privileged to spend 2 hours with the deans this morning in conversations around how they're looking at the various programmatic level, because we need to take it to that very level to be sure that we're doing what we need to do in a lab or in a theater and across experiential learning that happens many times outside our campus. So I'm going to turn to Ada Bufadel from the Vice President's office to give a little more color to that, those comments.
Thank you, President Mantella. We do have several groups working on questions like these right now. It's both administrators and faculty to get at some answers, find the right way to go with things. When it comes to labs in particular, like take a scientific lab, I think the direction we're going to end up in is to practice social distancing like we would anywhere else. To have students and faculty wearing masks during class, perhaps reduce the size of the lab so that the students are spread out farther from each other. We want everybody to be safe.
Great, thank you. So President Mantella, some of our alumni work in businesses that usually employ some of our students or have some of our students for internships and other career experiences. They're struggling for some of those placements given that, you know, they've also moved to remote work. What role can alumni play that are in some decision-making capacity with their businesses and some even owning their own businesses and supporting our students in the internship experience, either remotely or in the future?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One is, first of all, thank you so much for the question because it's so important to us. that these experiences be as vibrant and as cross-cutting across our curriculum as possible. And we realize that environment's going to change. And even if I used our own student employment, we employ a lot of students on our campus. And right now we're thinking about what we can do virtually. It's actually expanded the opportunities for us to think about the roles students can play in connecting with other students as mentors. So it's been a good exercise to contemplate sort of taking them off the front desk and putting them into really exciting spots where they can contribute in ways that really lift the level of their game and lift the level of our game. So virtual, I think, is something we'd ask you to consider. Focusing, if you can't do a full internship and you can do work-based projects, that'd be something that we'd be interested in. We're interested in, if you can't do internships because of the economic considerations, we'd love to know that you could support a student in terms of the experience, but not the economics. And that's a place where we're going to be looking if we can provide any additional support. I saw in the Q&A a question around what alumni can do further to support students in hardship. And I think these kinds of work experiences, whether they are paid or unpaid, are just so critical to their education. And so the more you can help us mount those, the better. It's a great experience to be in a situation where you have to think about re-engineering or rebuilding or what is core to your mission. And so some of what you're dealing with in our enterprises is great learning for students, albeit I know none of us want to have the great learning this way. They make wonderful experiences. So we would ask you to keep coming forward with not only what you can do, any constraints to doing it. And we're going to try to solve for as many of those to keep our experiences vital. I should also say, because Karen will tell me I didn't complete my thought well, is that if you have the means to support in the Student Support Fund, we would love for you to do that as well. The students are dealing, a lot of our students are dealing with unexpected expense, whether they're, a lease they left here and costs they have in home, unexpected costs in terms of the technology that they needed to upgrade, loss of jobs, illness in their family. They have not been untouched by COVID. And so anything that you can do, we would greatly appreciate it. And Lakers have stepped up, and I thank you for that, as has the faculty and staff.
Great, thank you. So some questions about a worst case scenario if we needed to continue remote education or online education in the fall. It's really a two-part question from multiple responses. One, how do we ensure the quality of online education that we're delivering to our students? And what support are we providing for students as they participate in online education?
So we have done a number of things in that regard. First and foremost, we were well positioned to begin, because the way in which the university looked at the sort of emergence of online was to train and to create deeper understanding and sort of the best of online pedagogy. So a lot of our faculty, I think over 50%, had been trained in online pedagogy. And we had what they call a learning management system that was broadly used. So there was a place people went to get content, materials, and engage. So we had a good starting line, if you will, to move forward from. We also, as I said at the onset, we made the decision to stay remote for public health and to deepen our own skills and competencies in the online learning space. We are planning for the most complex scenario, right? We're planning for a public health informed face-to-face residential experience. So if we had to move to online, or we had to scale down to really limited face-to-face opportunities, we should be even in a better position to do that, because we have taught fully online and we have considered limiting the face-to-face. And so the degrees of freedom that we'll have to move from one scenario to another should be pretty high. And we're giving ourselves the appropriate planning time by having summer online. So Ed, did I cover, is there anything I missed in that explanation?
President Mantilla, I think I want to talk a bit about the faculty too. So these are alumni. As students, you experienced working with our faculty. We hire faculty who are student focused, who believe in student engagement and believe in quality education. So as we adapted to the changes earlier this year, we kept focused on those things. Our faculty rose to the occasion in terms of some training that we provided in mid-March before we moved to remote. It was fantastic, the number of faculty who showed up for different events back when we could still show up for those things. So it's part of what's at the starting line there for us is that our faculty are first and foremost committed to student success and to learning.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate that. And I would just say I went to those trainings. They were over the course of 4 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And every question that came from the faculty related to the well-being of students, bar none, every single question. And I think that just underscores Ed's narrative on our faculty and that it's very real. You experienced it and very powerful.
Thank you, President Mantilla. So a number of alumni curious about some of their own needs in this current time as their own job, employment, economic situation shift, and are curious just broadly, a number of questions about the support that the university might be providing to alumni, as well as additional information that we can provide on the Lifetime Learning account and any new opportunities for alumni as they also enter a time of uncertainty.
Great, thank you. So let me take it from the individual and then take it from the business, if I may. So from the individual perspective, you may recall that at my inauguration, I announced the Laker Lifetime Learning. It's a commitment to be there over your lifetime with some resources that we've mounted. We've effectively mounted $1,000 per Laker that returns to school. If you find that, let's say you're facing a job loss or you're facing a furlough period and you want to get some additional skills around the knowledge economy, you want to look at things that make you more marketable, there is the Laker Lifetime Learning account here for you to be able to utilize that for continued learning in ways that make sense to you. We've also made a commitment to your ongoing career network and career support through the Laker Lifetime Learning. And Troy Farley has been working extremely hard along with Michelle Rhodes, who you see on this call, at putting together the elements, and Chris Barbie, all three of them have led the effort of how do we expand the career support, because we know what you have told us in your survey, and I would guess in this COVID period, it has become more pronounced, is that you want to be able to network, you want lifetime career support, and you want special access to advanced education. So that's what we're building through these programs. And I think this is an important time to consider all of those services and supports from Grand Valley. And we look forward to building them more deeply going forward. As an enterprise, we have been working also very hard with our employers and nonprofits around what they're facing, from supporting through our small business center and looking forward to any ways that we can support new competencies that you may be considering, or supporting whether you're growing and posting jobs right now because you're in one of those fields in more demand or businesses in more demand, or whether you are dialing back and thinking about what you do for your employees and how learning may be a piece of that. So we're ready to work with you on that as well.
Thank you, President Mantilla. So a question from our Q&A around changes in admissions requirements as both graduate students potentially, or alumni as graduate students thinking about coming back to Grand Valley, as well as opportunities for transfer students during this time if people are looking to stay local.
Right. So we have relaxed the test requirements across the board because of the availabilities of tests. They're across the board in undergraduate and graduate. There are some graduate areas that are required in order for people to achieve their licensure or continuing education requirement, but in large part, they're relaxed across the board. That includes some of our scholarshiping. We encourage you to take the tests if you can, because it gives you more of an opportunity at scholarshiping, but you will not be disqualified for not testing. We also have worked hard on providing support should people want to make a more local choice, if you will, for their college experience. And I'm going to ask Chick Blue to expand a little bit on the availability of admissions opportunities and or scholarship aid for those individuals.
Yes, we put together a number of packages to broaden the availability of our merit scholarships and our Laker scholarship, Laker grant. And in addition to that, the L3 money is now available to be used. I think I would tip my hat to Michelle Rhodes, who is doing this work day in and day out to speak to some of these programs that have been reinitiated.
Michelle, do you want to add? And again, we want to acknowledge the work you've done to financial aid is a complicated business when you're getting federal relief funds that have different criteria and you're responding to numerous requests for hardship. You and your team have done an incredible job. Thank you for that. And please add anything for the group that may have more questions on students who need financial supports.
Yeah, thank you, President Mantella. Thanks, Chick. Yeah, so in financial aid, we've approached this, you know, just like President Mantella shared around the university leadership philosophy, is really wanting to make sure that the individuals are taken care of. So we have received some hardship funds from the federal government, and we are taking requests for those. You know, we have thousands of those that we're working through and making sure that money gets directly into the hands of students immediately. The other thing that was mentioned was the L3 initiative. So we've awarded about 1,000 students already for this spring summer semester. So that is alumni who are coming back to Grand Valley and taking any class for credit. You don't need to be a degree seeking student. It can just be one class. And we have been making those awards as well. And then, you know, as Chick mentioned, we've also done some looking at the different ways we can impact with our scholarships and grants for this fall and even for the fall of 2021. So we've been doing both things right now for the immediate students that we have, and we've been thinking about our future as well as we move along and making decisions all towards the individual student as much as we can. You know, we have a lot of money and we try to make sure we award it as equitably as we can, and are willing to deal on a case-by-case basis with student hardships as they come up. So that's kind of been our approach, with a lot of support from university leadership as well.
Michelle, could you give them some idea of how much of that first tranche you've actually awarded? Yeah,
so we did receive $9.1 million from the federal government. It's coming in 2 batches. So that's the first tranche. And as of today, I think we've awarded a little over 6 million of that already. And, you know, the rest is well on its way to being awarded. So we've done that as quickly as possible. That was the goal of the federal government in giving those funds. And, you know, once again, that's really a case-by-case look at the individual students that needed that support. You know, and as much as we can impact them, we've gotten the money into their hands.
Yeah, I would want to add here that Grand Valley's taking, I think, a position that the federal funds that we receive, whether they're available for other costs, and so in the tranche 2, there's 2 tranches, will be available to use on a broader basis. We're making student support our priority for both tranche 1 and tranche 2. We feel very strongly that the institution can support the challenges of the short-term disruption, and if we have a longer-term disruption, we'll have structural decisions that we must make because they'll be ongoing. And so therefore, we are going to put all of those dollars in the hands of student support or costs that relate to being sure we can have them here safely.
Thank you, President Mantella. So several questions submitted in the registration, at least a dozen or so, around your perspective on higher education more broadly. You're a national, global leader of higher education. With all that's happening in the country and around the world, what message do you have for graduating seniors in 2020? Is a college degree, still relevant today?
Yeah, I've been looking a lot at the data and, of course, talking to a lot of my colleagues across the country, and been doing some writing on behalf of Grand Valley on the future of education. And I think that the evidence shows, if you look at even the most recent unemployment numbers at 14.7% across the nation, the rate skews towards those without a degree or with a high school diploma, with associate's degree. The employment rate at this very difficult time is 8%. The unemployment rate at this very difficult time is 8% with a baccalaureate degree. I think the baccalaureate degree is still going to be extremely important to entering the workforce in the knowledge economy at a level that is not only well position you for the future and the future jobs, but also is keeping you more stable in the tumultuous times. So I think the degree is still important. I do think that there's going to be new ways to think about. This is something that we've talked about with the alumni and with community and inside our community as well, that there's going to be more what we call unbundling of the credential. People are going to want to demonstrate movement, whether that's a badge, a certificate, and that has to be a currency towards advancing education. The sort of day of them being non-credit and then you start again in kind of the same space and move forward, I think is going to change. I think that higher education is going to take a substantial blow. And I think that there will be institutions that will struggle to survive. There are institutions today that have no runway. They're over leveraged. They've been dealing with an enrollment decline. They're at a high price. They're discounting very highly. And so we're going to see some change to the educational landscape in higher education. I think that Grand Valley is in a very strong position when you consider all of those attributes. And I think that we can be in an even stronger position as we adopt some of the innovations that we talked about as we started this journey together under my leadership at Grand Valley, which is how do we do the highest quality digital education for our adult learners? How do we introduce things in degree completion for which the person gets a degree and a certificate in a professional skills area that's in high demand? How do we integrate work and learning and make it more flexible to be able to take a period where you have to work or work more and less educational experience? Whenever I say these things, I don't want people to characterize it as one flavor at Grand Valley. We will still have a full sort of coming of age experience for 18 to 22-year-olds as a part of our university environment. But the more we diversify what we do, the greater our impact will be and the greater number of audiences we will serve at a time where education is so important to rebuilding our nation.
Thank you, President Mantella. So several folks have asked what lessons we have learned as a university, what lessons have you learned as a president as we have faced this pandemic that we may learn from as we continue our planning into the future and for education more broadly at Grand Valley?
My colleagues may woo the day I said this, but we've learned we can operate at a very fast pace, right? The sort of adage that an academic pace is one that sort of plods along and is well considered, and lots of committees and lots of conversation before we move. Well, we had to move in 4 days. We've had to move repeatedly. We're more agile than we think we are. And we've had to trust each other. You know, here, what's wonderful about Grand Valley is that people operate with the presumption of trust. I'm going to say that one more time. We operate with the presumption of trust. And that's so critical, because if you think I'm moving to do something, you know, that is an agenda versus we need to move together to preserve our student experience, that's a very different kind of environment to work quickly. So I've learned how important trust is. I've learned that we're more agile than we think we are. And I certainly never considered some of the things we're going to be considering for the long haul. So that's all been new learning for me. This whole notion of, you know, maintaining the public health and how we think about each other is not something as an educator I've thought about every day of my life. Perhaps as a healthcare provider you have, or but it's certainly, you know, elevated my consciousness around what responsibility means. When we say our mission is to grow individuals, communities, and society, you know, this has put real texture on what it means. And so that's certainly given us, I think, new learning on the societal responsibility and community responsibility side. I actually would be curious and invite others on the panel to comment, because it's a great question and we probably haven't paused enough to ask ourselves that question.
I'd like to say something. What I began to understand, knew about our university is we're a high touch culture here. And when we moved to remote, the interactions that happen between faculty and students, between students and students and so on, a lot which are unplanned, suddenly don't happen so much because you have to be more intentional about it. I think over time, in March and April, we learned to get more intentional in order to have those interactions, because that's really important. It's part of what we are.
I think that's a really important insight. As so many people have talked a lot about digital and how we've gained more understanding of that, but we've also gained more understanding of face-to-face. I mean, you probably sat in a few classes where people pushed content out. And now we see face-to-face as something that's precious, right? You know, and we want social interaction. We want to support one another. We want to build a network. And so I think it's, just as Ed said, it's calling us to a higher level of consciousness about both digital and face-to-face instruction. Others? Anybody else want to add one more? Matt, you've been here at the university for some time.
Thank you for not calling me old. I have. And one of the things that has consistently impressed me about Grand Valley is how, whatever the issue of the day may be, we rise to the occasion together. That the president and, in this case, her team, work together quickly to identify problems and figure out solutions that work for our students, our faculty, and our staff, and our reputation. Because Grand Valley's reputation is to be student-centered. That has been at the middle of everything we have done, everything that we have tested over the last couple of months, I think has demonstrated the truism of that reputation.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. President Mantilla, a number of our alumni have submitted questions about our plans for the future around the Detroit Center and our work in Southeast Michigan and its importance for the rest of the state and our country. Are you able to share any of the future plans or thoughts that we have in mind for our work in the Southeast side of the state?
Yeah. I mean, I continue to feel the Southeast side of the state is so important to the overall well-being of our community and the overall opportunities for Grand Valley. And so we are going to continue to work probably more digitally than face-to-face for a bit of time on how we can expand our supports there. Let me tell you a few things we've already done. We've already committed to bring our new degree completion program there, and about, I won't get the number right, but we call it our advanced portfolio of degrees. So there's a whole set of degrees. There's about 17. And in the degree that's degree completion, there's 4 certificates. And then some of these things can be, in fact, unbundled. They will all be offered digitally, and there will be serviced in Detroit. So there'll be some supports directly in Detroit for those adult students, and some additional face-to-face experience that will be light in terms of, it's not going to be 80% of the degree or every 3rd weekend, but there will be at least 3 touch points so the group can come together in the Southeast region for those programs. So that's our newest advancement. We have lots of ideas, and we're excited to continue to do more there to make Grand Valley a real part of the fabric of the community in even a deeper way. So looking forward to doing more, but that's where we are with our plans today.
Great, thank you, President Mantella. And zooming out a bit from that question for a final question, and then any final remarks. This is your first year as a president at Grand Valley. Many of our alumni participated in some of your earlier Retire Together events, like our alumni huddles, where you shared a bold vision for our future. Curious if that vision has changed and how that is being shaped by the current crisis that our world and nation is facing.
Yeah, my vision has not changed. It's only been reinforced. There's been elements of the work that I've identified. You know, we have to move away from a supply chain notion of higher education and support differently at K-12, support and scaffold that education more effectively into higher education, look at how we deliver through multiple modalities, looking at giving people choice. Those all seem so much more relevant today than even when we talked about them several months ago. The only thing I can say to you is the stakes are higher. If we don't do this, you know, I have children and I have grandchildren, and I'm nervous for them in terms of what all this means, the steps that we've taken, the dollars that we've spent as a nation, our capacity to recover over time, our capacity to control our own and modify our own behaviors. So to me, the work is the same. The agenda needs to be focused on even more ambitiously, more aggressively, more boldly, and because the stakes are higher. So maybe Jesse, if it's okay, I would just want to say a couple more things because I know our time is getting tight. One is, if I can ask of you to continue to volunteer to support our student community and our broader community anywhere, any way you can. And I know that we have some people online who are putting in the chat how you can do that. So I won't go into how, but all of those web addresses will be there for you. We need placements for our students. We need support for our experiential learning, co-ops, internships. So any ways you can help us to continue to mount the Grand Valley advantage. When I was with Lakers at the Detroit huddle, you all told me that the network, Lakers Helping Lakers, was one of the most important attributes of the university. So that's what we're really calling for, Lakers Helping Lakers, and helping us both continue to build this university to a stronger future. And I would just say, take care of yourself, be safe, be well, and don't hesitate to access us for what you need. We're here to support you for a lifetime. Thank you for being with us. Hail to thee, Grand Valley.